Thank you all for coming out today. I think most of you know who I am. I'm Alan Stover with the City of Decatur's Community Development Department. So thank you all for coming today. I know that we requested that y'all come. John, I think as we look at the crowd, they're all sub-recipients. So, thank y'all for coming. I think it'll be good information. What we're doing today is, each year we do a one-year action plan. But every 5 years, we have to do a 5-year consolidated plan to sort of set the vision of what we'll do for the next 5 years. So that's what John Gallows, he's a contractor that we hired to help us with this consolidated plan. So we're going to let John take over from here. We do have, just as one of the things that, one of the other things that we do, not the 5-year consolidated plan, but with fair housing that we have to do is, we do a 5-year, we do a fair housing plan. Part of that fair housing plan is just education. So we have about 8 brochures that talk about fair housing, anywhere from what fair housing is to what discrimination looks like. So if you'd like, there's plenty of these here. If you want to pick some of them up, carry back to the office. If you think there might be a need for that, please do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
I am John Callow, and prior to retiring 4 or 5 years ago, I was what Alan is here in Decatur in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So I have done a few of these that we're going to talk about in a town that's maybe a little bit larger than Decatur, but quite comparable in what we're about. For instance, one of the similarities between Murfreesboro and Decatur is you've got Huntsville, we had Nashville. And it was about that kind of relationship where you're 30 miles down the road, you're 30 miles east, west. Yeah. So a lot of similarities, and with that, Alan kind of introduced this. Every 5 years we're required to do a strategic plan, tell the Department of Housing and Urban Development how we're going to spend, in our case, community development block grant money. It's called a consolidated plan because HUD's housing and housing programs, actually they've got 5 programs. We only get one of them, but it's still a consolidated plan because the rule is the same for all 5. So we're dealing with CDBG. I know all of you in this room right now are sub-recipients. Best sub-recipient I ever had could not say CDBG to save her life, but she was terrific. So, Community Development Block Grant involved the Nixon administration, so it was it was originally a Republican program. There were a number of programs, including, urban renewal, the Model Cities program. There were some infrastructure things. What the Nixon administration, somebody had this great idea. Why don't we, instead of making all the decisions here in D.C., why don't we farm that out to the people who actually know what their issues are? And with that, they created the Community Development Block Grant. The whole idea is that you guys know more about what your needs are and how to address them than somebody reading an application in Washington, D.C. That makes sense? Makes sense to me. It's a formula grant, okay? Like a piece of pie. I think that's a cherry pie. Anybody like cherry pie? That's my favorite, so that's why that's cherry pie. It's like a big cherry pie. Total number of pieces equal all of the entitlement communities, plus the states, plus Puerto Rico, plus, believe it or not, American Samoa and Guam, and I think, because I've met people from American Samoa and Guam who get CDBG money. And so there is this big pie, and we're all cutting that up, right? Then what Congress does is decide how much filling goes into that pie. So how big each piece of that pie, I think is that cherry or blueberry now? Or blackberry. Anyway, that's good pie too. Anyway, it's a formula. There are actually two formulas. And the formula that determines how much money Decatur is going to get is based on population, poverty numbers, and housing overcrowding. And all of those numbers come from the Census Bureau. And what they're basing all those numbers on are the 5-year rolling averages in the American Community Survey. So I wanted to give you a picture of what CDBG for Decatur has looked like in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, we got $629,000. Am I reading that? $639,000. Alan, would you love to have $639,000 again? Well, you can see what has happened over the years with different administrations, with different Congresses. Most recent grant, right now, they're operating on $452,000 and some change. As we go forward, we have to project for the next 5 years. How do we project this? You look at over the course of the 20 years and you've got ups and downs. We're proposing to use a flat funding as we project forward for the next 5 years. Does that make sense? Okay. Who are we serving? Well, you guys as subrecipients know who we're serving, and hopefully we'll have folks out in the public who are going to see this and know that what the people we're serving are low and moderate income persons, 80% or below the area median income. So the area median income for the Decatur MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, is 82.5, and so 80% of 82.5 is 65.7. That would be based on a family of 4. So HUD gives us a chart every year, that adjusts those numbers for family size. As subrecipients, you know how that works. This is what the current chart looks like. So if you've got a single person, the area median income adjusted would be $46,000, adjusted all the way up to 8. And there is a formula for increasing that if you have even more than 8 in the household. Okay? Now, Congress allocates, HUD disperses, that's the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and every entitlement, and that's what Decatur is, it's an entitlement city. Every entitlement is responsible for planning how to spend that money, and then doing so. 5 years ago, this is what the plan looked like. That was the cover 5 years ago. So now we're in the process. We're in the 5th year of that consolidated plan, and so what we're doing now is talking about where we've been, where we are, where we need to be going over that next 5 years. The consolidated plan I talked about, it's called the consolidated plan because there are actually cities that get all 5 of those grants. There's a program called HOME, which Decatur is not. The cities that get HOME money are called participating jurisdictions. Decatur is not one. All right. There is a program called the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is homeless money. Decatur does not get ESG money. There is a program called HOPWA, which is for people with AIDS. The closest Hopla, Huntsville gets Hopla money. They get ESG money. They get home money. We get CDBG money. And then there's also the Housing Trust Fund, which is one of those 5 programs. We get one, but it's still a consolidated plan. HUD has a rule, 24 CFR 91, if anybody is, I'm a rule nerd. I love rules. But there is a rule, and that specifies what has to be in this plan, what has to be in those 5 annual action plans to support the consolidated plan.
What did you say, 24-1?
24 CFR 91 is the rule for the consolidated planning. The rule, there are 2 other rules that you need to know. One of them is 24 CFR 570. That's the rule for CDBG. And then because you're subrecipients, you are considered non-federal entities, because as soon as you sign that subrecipient agreement, you become a non-federal entity, which means that you have to comply with 2 CFR 200. Is that enough rules? Everybody confused? I love it. I love it. I teach this stuff. So, but anyway, if you go to 24 CFR 91, the consolidated plan rule, it tells us that we must address in our consolidated plan housing, barriers to affordable housing, homelessness, community development, non-housing needs, non-homeless special needs, and fair housing. These brochures that Alan has, please take them, please give them out. Fair housing is it's not just important, it's the law. And as non-federal entities, it's part of our responsibility to affirmatively further fair housing in this community. We also have to address issues like citizen participation, which is one of the reasons we're having this hearing. The city of Decatur has a citizen participation plan, and we're required to have 2 public hearings in support of the con plan and the action plans every year.
You said citizen what? Citizen
participation.
Tell what that entails.
Well, that means that we're holding this hearing, and we're making this hearing available online. It's streaming right now, and it will also be available for people to come back and look at. Because what we're doing is we're saying we need to know from you, the public, how you think would be the best way for, we're going to identify needs. How do we best address those needs? Okay? And so we also have to talk about monitoring, because it is the city's responsibility, once we get this money, disperse this money, we have to make sure that that those of you who are getting this money are complying with the rules. And so we have to tell HUD how we're going to do that. And that's part of this plan that we're writing. We have to talk to them and keep in mind, when we're talking about this plan, we're talking about at least 3 different audiences. We're writing the plan because Department of Housing and Urban Development tells us we have to, because it's regulatory. So HUD is one of our audiences, but we're also writing it for the people who sit up here, because they're the ones that are going to have to approve it. But we're also writing it for the public, which is you as subrecipients, and the folks that are your clients, and the people who are potential clients, all of those low and moderate income people. That's part of the audience as well. So it's there are certain things that we have to put in there because HUD tells us they have to be in there. But there are other things that, and sometimes are the same things, because we're writing for them, so they'll approve it. And then we're also writing for the public. So, all right. We also have to talk about the partnerships. All right, because all of you have worked with Alan and Suzanne, Stephanie. You know that there's no way that that Decatur as a city is going to do what some of you are out there doing. Now, there are others of you that do. We have subrecipients within the city as well. So, and that's just. I don't know how you can do business in CDBG without subrecipients, all right, because they're the engine that makes the whole program work. We also have to talk about lead-based paint, because any house built prior to 1978 could have lead-based paint in it. And if you don't know anything about lead-based paint, some of you weren't even born in 1978. I was, and fortunately, my mom never told me that I ever ate lead-based paint, so maybe I wasn't. But you know, lead-based paint has a tendency to break off in chips, and little kids have a tendency to eat lead-based paint because it's sweet. Apparently, it tastes good, even though it's poison. And the scientists know that it can impede brain development in young children. Since HUD, one of its goals is housing, housing and urban development. Housing is important. The people who live in those houses are important, particularly those low-income kids that are more liable to live in those pre-78 houses that still has deteriorating lead paint. That's why we have to talk about lead paint. So in the course of preparing this plan, I told you about 24 CFR 91. Well, one of the sections in 24 CFR 91 says that we have to consult. And we've already consulted with some of you. Did anybody in here already done a survey for us? That's part of that consultation process. We began that back in June. And so we've put together I've got a stack of surveys about that high. And we talked about housing, remember? We talked about barriers to affordable housing. We talked about community needs. We talked about public infrastructure. We talked about public facilities, because those are all things that HUD wants us to consult about. So what I'm going to do is bring in today some of those results from the consultation. We'll get that out. Now we want to find out what the rest of the community thinks about what we found during that consultation process. So here's what we've heard so far. We've heard that our CDBG assets should be used citywide rather than be restricted to low-mod neighborhoods, because I think what we're hearing is we have low-mod people living in every neighborhood of this city. And one of the things that I'm in the process of doing, for instance, is mapping every housing choice voucher that's given out by the Housing Authority. And what I'm finding is that they're scattered all over this city and into Athens, because apparently there's not enough rental housing available in Decatur itself to fill all of those needs. So, in Murfreesboro, we had my housing authority gave me a list of, they had a voucher that was in Honolulu, because the voucher moved with fortunately, Decatur does not have any Honolulu vouchers they're paying for. But what we also heard in the consultation was that our housing programs should be targeted to owner-occupied units rather than rental units. That doesn't mean that we won't propose at some point over the next 5 years, something that would be in that direction. But right now, what folks are telling us is that owner-occupied units is where we should be headed, unless we start getting those comments back from the public as part of that public participation part of the project that tells us otherwise.
But it should be otherwise.
We would love to have written comments to just that effect. And that'll give me a chance here to say something important. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask for questions, but I'm going to also ask for comments. It's important to us to get those comments. It's important for us to get those comments in writing. All right? Because when we go back and tell HUD that we have gotten comments, we need to be able to tell them how we responded to those comments. We need to be able to put those comments into the plan. All right, so.
We've got comment cards when we get finished, we'll hand those out.
Excellent, excellent. So we will, for those of you out in the ether that are watching this later on, we do want those comments. You can submit it to us in writing by snail mail or by email, and the email address is on one of the slides. And if you go to the city website for the Community Development Department, there's an email link also. So we certainly invite those comments. It's really important we get those in writing. Okay, so when we did the surveys as part of the consultation program, this is what we found to be the five most urgent needs: down payment assistance, CDBG eligible acquisition activities, removal of architectural barriers, owner-occupied housing rehab, and housing counseling. Those are the five things that, and if you took that survey, you know that there's close to 20 choices. And these are all eligible activities spelled out in the CDBG rule. These are what folks told us are the barriers to affordable housing indicator. Home prices too high for low and moderate income households. Mortgage rates discourage home ownership. The Fed might help us with that today. Rents are too high for low income households. Residents are resistant to building affordable housing in their neighborhood. NIMBYism, that's, I cannot, I'm trying to think if I can think of a single city in America that doesn't have a not in my backyard problem. That's not something that is just a Decatur. That was something we certainly had in Murfreesboro. They certainly have it in Nashville. They've got it. I've seen the con plan from Huntsville. That's a problem in Huntsville. That's a problem everywhere. But it's a problem here that we need to figure out a way to address. And we also were told that raw land is too expensive for development of affordable housing. I tell you, we listen to what we are hearing, because home price is too high for low and moderate income households. Alan and his department have already addressed that issue. The down payment assistance program has been very successful over the years, but it's slowed down. One of the reasons it slowed down was, what was it, $4,000? Well, $4,000 got to the point it didn't make a difference.
Exactly.
And to go through the hoops that you had to do to get to it, it was hard to give that money away. I know. I inherited a program that was given $5, and we got into that, and we raised it. And we were going, had I not retired, we were going to raise it again, because it's all about making housing affordable. instead of $4,000, that subsidy is now $15,000, and that's already in place. It will also be a part of this new plan. All right, what else? We had to talk about public facilities and what the people who filled in our surveys told us the 5 greatest needs would be a domestic violence shelter, child care, homeless shelter, a youth center. Oh, there's a typo. I spent for a time in my life, I was in newspapering, and I spent a couple of years as a copy editor. You know, the toughest copy to edit is your own. I'll fix that at some point. Okay, that embarrasses me. And then a day shelter for the homeless. Those were the 5 greatest needs that were identified. Public infrastructure. These are the problems that were identified. Flood drainage. Gosh, you live next to the Tennessee River that's part of a lake that's been dammed up, and the water rises and falls, right? And you had a big rain last weekend. A little bit of. I saw the pictures in the paper this morning of that football game in Prideful. That was a lot of water. But sewers, streets, waters, utility lines, you know, all of those are things that are eligible expenses for CDBG. But if we go back to that slide at the very beginning, $450,000 doesn't go very far. So there are a lot of things that you can use this money for. You have to identify those needs. There's no way you're going to address all of them. So what we've got to do as part of this plan is figure out the needs that we can address, best address with our limited funds. Public services. These are what people were telling us. I think I'm seeing some of you smile in this room to see that your special interests are on this list. Mental health services, child care services, services for abused and neglected children, youth services, and substance abuse services. I'll never forget, I did a survey surveys like this for one of my plans in Murfreesboro, and one of my subrecipients worked with abused and neglected children, and she took the survey and she took it to her Sunday school class. And all of a sudden, abused and neglected children were on the top of our list because she had lobbied, more or less, for her specific interest. But we were fine with that because she ran a great program, and it was a needed program. So it's important for us to know what these programs are. Part of our problem with public services, though, is that there are limitations on how we can spend this money. HUD tells us that we can spend no more than 15% of our current allocation for public services. I know that I love public services. That's where I thought we were getting the most bang for our buck. And it hurt me to the very core of my soul that I could only spend 15% of my money on public services. But that's what the rule says. That's what we have to adhere to. So that's why we'd love to give y'all all $450,000, but we can't. We can only split up 15% of that. So I'll mention the other plans that are part of this community. They belong to the community planning and development silo at HUD, the 5 programs. Home is one of them, and Decatur is not a home PJ. So here's what we can't do. We cannot do new housing construction, with one exception, and we are just finishing up activity here in Decatur with the Decatur Community Development Partnership, which is a community-based development organization. It's a subdivision, and I think we're down to, 1 unit left in there. in talking with staff, we don't see this as being an ongoing activity. All right, but that is, and why we can't go build affordable housing on our own, it's for that very reason, where it's just not an eligible activity. We can't spend CDBG money to run the government. All right, we can use it to run the CDBG program, but not the rest of government. Operating and maintenance expenses. You know, you can use CDBG money to build a park. Did you know that? But you can't pay to mow the grass that you planted with the CDBG money. You can put in new street lights, but you can't replace the bulbs when they burn out. You can pave a new street, but you can't fix the potholes. That's just one of those things. We can remove architectural barriers here in City Hall, should we be asked to, but that's all we could do in this building with CDBG money, and we can't make income payments. Now, there was an exception to that put back in, was it the COVID 2020? We were able to do some things with that, but what they're really saying is that if we're going to help, for instance, with the COVID money, we were helping pay rent and utilities, if I recall correctly. But the payments had to go directly to the landlord or to the utility company. We couldn't give money directly to beneficiaries. And you cannot do that with regular CDBG money either. So, that should be for 24-25. That's another typo. I'm embarrassed again. But for this current program year, this is what the council approved for the core programs. Program administration, that's to keep Alan's office running. The council approved $119,000 for single-family housing rehab, which is primarily the weatherization program. $175,000 for affordable housing, the mortgage assistance. And as I told you, we've just in the last couple of months increased that subsidy from $4,000 to $15,000. Is it working yet? I am told it's already working, which is good. And then because of that $15,000 cap, that's what we're currently allocating for public service grants. So a total CDBG budget of $452,615. I think you got it down to the penny, don't you, Alan? I always did it to the penny, except the year that I got in trouble and budgeted more than I actually had. And that is something Alan never wants to do because if you overspend and break a cap with HUD, they come back on you and you have to go to council and say, you know what, I made a mistake, and you're going to have to write a check from the general fund, which let me tell you is one of the most humiliating things that can happen to you. So that's not going to happen here, is it? Okay. So what we're doing right now, we're doing that weatherization that CAPNA is handling. One of the things that we're investigating is the possibility of expanding that rehab program. And we're in conversations, I believe, with CAPNA about where that could possibly go. Affordable housing, mortgage assistance for first-time home buyers, all right? A subsidy of up to $15,000 to cover 1/2 of the required down payment. But it can also be used to cover closing costs, principal reduction, and or buying down points. And part of our consultation was with realtors and mortgage bankers, and we were told that that last part, buying down points, could make a significant difference in making housing affordable. Assistance is available citywide, but priority is given to home purchases in neighborhoods with home ownership rates of 50% or less. We can target those neighborhoods because of the census data that shows up, and that's how that's done. This is the part that impresses me. Over the last 17 years, Decatur has invested more than $1.3 million in CDBG funds to assist more than 400 home buyers. That's significant, let me tell you. I wish that I could have said that about Murfreesboro, because it sure wasn't. It wasn't 400. We were over 17 years. We maybe did 250 or 300. That's significant. That's a good program. And I would expect that we're going to. That's going to be a big part of our ongoing 5-year plan, unless we're told otherwise as part of the public participation process. So affordable housing, unfortunately, these next pictures are houses that I did in Murfreesboro. They're not in Decatur, full disclosure. But affordable housing is affordable housing wherever you are. And I remember once having a discussion with the planning director in Murfreesboro. He said, well, what is affordable housing? He thought he was going to catch me there. Well, HUD defines affordable housing. Affordable housing, housing is affordable if you're spending no more than 30% of your income, your household income, on housing-related expenses, which would include rent or mortgage plus utilities, all right? So that's what affordable is. So when we talk about affordable housing, and you talk about people who are cost burdened, which means they're paying more than affordable rates, and cost burden is one of the things that we look at in this plan. You can be in that $500,000 a year range and still be cost burdened if you buy a too much house, right? So we're not concerned with those people. We're concerned with those people that are households that are $64,000 or less. And we all know what housing prices have done. And so it's up to us to try to make it get as close to affordable as we can do. The public service grants, I think I talked about that 15% cap that HUD puts on us. Unfortunately, that is not regulatory. There's a difference between regulatory and statutory. Regulatory is a rule that's written by, in our case, HUD. But it all derives, everything HUD does derives from the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, which is the law, which is the statute. And unfortunately, when Congress wrote that statute in 1974, they wrote in a provision limiting public services to 15%. We can't play with it. I wish we could, but we can't. It's statutory, not regulatory. So, you see yourself on that list? These are the public service grants that are currently approved. All right? Youth services, $36,000. You guys get the big chunk. All the way down to Decatur Youth Enrichment at $1,800. You know, I know enough from dealing with subrecipients that every penny counts. I also know that administering CDBG subrecipient grants is occasionally burdensome. So one of the things that you can count on from the Community Development Department, and this is Suzanne's job, is providing you technical assistance in making sure that you're complying with all the rules and regulations, particularly 570, 24 CFR 570, and our good friend 2 CFR 200, which means that you got to have lots of internal controls in place, and if you need help with that, that's their job. We have to talk about homelessness. We're part of a continuum of care. Continuum of care is HUD speak. HUD has divided the country into what they call a continuum of care, and there is homeless money that they can give to nonprofits that do homeless work. Unfortunately, all of the continuum of care money for our North Alabama Coalition is going to Huntsville. One of the things that I think that will be part of our recommendation in this consolidated plan is that we step up our participation in the North Alabama Coalition. That's really important. One of the things that I heard is that we've got issues here in Decatur that we need to deal with, and so that will be part of our ongoing emphasis over the next 5 years, is becoming better at that. Fair housing. Long-standing policy of the city is to affirmatively further fair housing. Does that sound like HUD speak? That's exactly what that is. That's actually written into the rule. I remember having to tell we were having a fair housing conference in Murfreesboro, and my mayor was going to come do an introductory, and he says, well, what should I say? I said, among other things, you must tell them that here in Murfreesboro, we affirmatively further fair housing. He said, that sounds like HUD speak. I said, that's exactly what it is. But that's our job. That's why we need your help getting these brochures out. One of the things that we found out 5 years ago is that we could do better on the education end. And these pamphlets that Alan and crew developed are terrific. And that's important that we get that out, and that we all have a responsibility to affirmatively further fair housing. What else could we do? These are right out of the rule. We can also do acquisition. Acquisition can take any number of directions. For instance, it could be buying vacant lots. It could be, and then you can sell those. Public facilities improvements. You've done streets here before. We're not doing streets right now. We've put money into public facilities. Did the center over there, that had some CDBG money in it? Yeah. Clearance activities, interim assistance, payment of non-federal share, loss of rental income. Those are all eligible. Those are, let me tell you, I would not expect any of those to be part of this next 5-year plan, with the exception, perhaps, of public facilities and improvements. One of the things that's going to be in this plan is going to do is paint a broad brush. There will be things in the plan that are not part of any immediate plan, but you don't. What's going to happen in 5 years? Who knows? All right? Who knows what need is going to come up over the next 5 years? And if we've identified a need and a goal, whether or not we intend to pursue it at the current time, who knows what's going to happen in year 4 or year 5 of that plan. Well, if we were to have to come back and amend that plan in 4 years or 5 years, it's not something you can turn on a dime with, all right? Because you have, and we've got a citizen participation plan that talks about what triggers a substantial amendment? Well, if we were to introduce a whole new goal, that would trigger a substantial amendment. And to get that done, you go through the same process that you go through for this consolidated plan, which is all of its, 90 days, even 120 days to get a substantial amendment done. So there will be things in this consolidated plan that are long-range wishful thinking, perhaps. That might be a better way of putting it. So that we will be able to make quick decisions at some point down the road if we need to. Housing rehabilitation, we're already doing that, the weatherization. There are other things that we can do, but with $450,000, it's going to be really hard to recommend some of these. I think everybody agrees that we need to, everything we've heard so far in the consultation is that we need to stick with the core programs, all right? Unless, as part of that public participation plan, we start getting comments that tell us otherwise, then we'll look at revising our thinking. So what we need you to tell us as part of the public comment process, we need to know what are the barriers to affordable housing in Decatur, because we have to write about barriers to affordable housing in 3 different sections of this plan. We have a needs assessment section that we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it in a market analysis section. And then we have to talk about it again in the strategic plan. And we have to talk about it again when we do the action plan each year. Something that HUD's really concerned about. We need to make sure, we already know what the folks in the consultation phase have told us. We need to know what the public thinks as well. And more importantly, what, if anything, we can do to mitigate those barriers. We need to know from the public, are there needs in public facilities, public improvements, public services for the general population, public services for special needs, services for the homeless? Are there things that we need to be addressing that we're not addressing now? That we're hoping that if the public has things to add there, that we can address those, get good ideas, get their opinions. Questions?
I'm not here just for the Decatur Youth Enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
Here to represent those people that I have been working with 40 years.
Excellent.
And also, there are many things that, you said that plan of action. Plan of action, we can't operate what we did 40 years ago, not even the Decatur Youth Enrichment.
Of course not.
And I know she was telling me I get $1,800. If I had to sit up and wait on $1,800, I would have gone 40 years ago. But I have children that are coming to me. And a lot of those kids coming, and they live in those places, you were saying Decatur is the same throughout the city of Decatur. It's not.
No, that's not what we said. What we said is that we need to spread the resources citywide because because the issues are citywide, not isolated.
No,
that's what we said.
Okay, I must have misunderstood.
I have a
lady that lived in the Northwest housing, and she has been in that house, and she was in there, and the doctor was seeing her. In that house was mildew and all kinds of things.
Sure.
And you said that's what their housing is for.
Mm-hmm.
Their housing, let her go. Now it was being, I guess they was inspecting it, but there were things in that house that they immediately took her out after it was discovered by some people in the community.
Well, one of the things that we're looking for are ways to address issues like that. So that would be, it would be really important for us to have that as a written comment so that we can respond to that and not just respond in,
Right. Just
but address that as part of the plan. Sure. That's why the comments are so important. And that's why it's important for us to get those comments in writing. The office is upstairs. You mail them, snail mail those comments or email them to Alan Stover. We've also got comment sheets that we're passing out. And I think we said this was going to last from 10 to 11. And the clock on the wall says we're almost there. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. Alan, you have things you want to close this with?
I just want to thank John for coming today. And he has been a great resource for us. And I thank you all. As John said, we couldn't, community development couldn't, the city couldn't do what they do without y'all's help. Each one of you all, I know that we have been partners for 25 years, some of us, and so we've been doing this a while. So it is very important that we get your feedback because I know that, and a lot of times what happens in these situations and, what winds up happening in the city in general is a lot of times we'll see that, we've got the city, we've got the providers, and then we've got the residents. And there's a lot of times that we'll get a resident will call and say, we need help with X. If it's really, we need somebody, I need my house fixed. Well, we're providing that assistance. So what does that say? It's that we're not doing as good a job as we need to getting that message out. Or I need some help with a wheelchair ramp. We've got somebody that's doing that. The city's assisting with that. So we need to do a better job of educating so that they know, hey, if you need a wheelchair ramp, you need to call volunteer center. I had not long ago, I had a lady that called and said, I can't, I don't have air conditioning in my house, and it's 100 degrees outside. Well, let me give you a phone. And she called, so a lot of it, again, could be just that we're not doing as good a job of educating as we need to. So we need to try to do a better job of that. And when I say we, I'm talking about us, the city of Decatur. And, because I know that y'all are on this, y'all are out in the weeds and y'all are working hard and, all of it. And so we just need to make sure that we connect those dots a lot of times. But we can't do it without y'all. And we really, truly appreciate everything that you do. So you've got those, as John said, you can go ahead and fill them out, get them back to Steph, or if you want to email them, we've got, and what we're going to do is Suzanne is going to email this PowerPoint presentation. We'll get that email to you.
And you all can distribute it.
Yeah. So if there's somebody that you would like to get it to.
The website too, so.
Can I say something? Even though you were talking about Tennessee, and being a former classroom teacher, I cannot set my classroom up for what that person is doing across town. The needs are different in every section. Therefore, when you come here, you'll find that even Huntsville, the needs are different because
Absolutely.
we have less money. I was sitting here and I was busy.
I was a classroom teacher too. I was a classroom teacher. That's how I started my life.
I'm just saying, I was there.
I taught 7th grade English.
And then I'm going to say this cake would be for everybody. It can't. So our needs are very much different. Even Northwest and Southwest and all these places are different. Therefore,
That's why we need to.
Your plan of action, it just can't go for, the whole total decay. It's got to go with what we say and
That's why we need your comments.
That's why you need our comments.
And when we send out the surveys, that's why it's so important that not only you fill out the surveys, but you distribute it to
Yeah.
other people,
Yeah.
because that's where this comes from.
Yes.
And we still want to get surveys back. And and it's important that we hear from your clients. All right? It's important that we hear you from, so you can be like my lady that had the program for abused children that took it to her Sunday school class and skewed all the results for 5 years.
Yeah, so, but again, if you have any questions, I think every one of you's got my phone number, don't hesitate to call, email, but we will get you this PowerPoint presentation for you to get it out to anybody that you'd like to see it out to. And we will, hopefully we'll have another one of these probably in
About 6 weeks.
about 6 weeks or so. And it'll be,
When I finish writing.
yeah, it'll be a little different from the standpoint of, instead of saying what we can do, we're going to say, we'll be casting the vision to say, this is what we're anticipating that this 5-year plan will look like.
And what we expect next year to look like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, Ms. Ellison, and not just you, Ms. Ellison, but, you know, as John said, we have to look at the fact that our grant funds are small. When we, I mean, and when I have this conversation.
It's not really the money, Alan.
Yeah.
It's just services that we got to do for each part. Their needs, they come out there and they help me. He'll tell you, I didn't have air for a whole, you know, and they kept coming and coming and coming. So I had to pull the CW later to come in here, to, you know. So in other words, what I'm saying is, the services that we need, it's not the money, it's the services. We all
We need to
want
try to, and that's, again, what we need to try to help connect those dots.
Yes.
Because, and I'm fully aware, and I think every one of us in this room, and y'all as providers know that we've got a homeless issue. I mean, there's a
That's a
homeless
homeless
issue
problem.
in
Yes.
Cadiz.
Yes.
But our grant being what it is, we're limited in what we can do, but what we, as John said, we're gonna have to get more, you know, hopefully we can help.
Go get your money out.
Yeah, and it is, and why it's not as, and like Ms. Ellison said, while it's not, you know, it might not be the money, it's the services.
It's the services.
We need to connect those dots, and we need to try to connect those providers that we do have. And the biggest thing that we need is we need emergency shelter right now that we don't have. There's nobody in Decatur providing that. Well, it would take 10 times what we've got to get an emergency shelter in Decatur. So the thing is, you know, and the Salvation Army continues to say that they're going to open their shelter back up. I don't think that's going to happen. And they haven't, and I don't see that happening. But, you know, but we know that's an issue. So we just got to figure out how we can connect those dots. And any of your comments, please make those, and they will absolutely be included in this plan.
We ain't got that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. You know, I want to finish with one last story. When I went to work for the city of Murfreesboro in community development, I had been in newspapering for a long time, so I knew a lot of people in the community. And they would come up to me and say, how do you like your new job? And I would say, you know what, I love my new job because it's the first time in my life that I've been able to get up in the morning knowing that sometime in the next 8 hours, there's a better than even chance that I'm going to be able to do something in somebody's life that's going to make a positive impact on them. And that's what you guys do every single day, and I love you for it. And thank you. Thank you for doing this.
And also
Thanks for making a difference in people's lives.
with these fair housing pamphlets, we also have them in Spanish. So, we don't have all, we've got 8, and I think we've got 5 that has been translated. So, please get what you want, hand those out, okay?
Thanks for coming, everybody.